The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered in emergency session. Admiral Zektar of the Vraxian Empire stood at the central podium, his 6 arms gesturing frantically at the holographic display showing the devastation wrought by the Devourers. 12 systems have fallen in the past lunar cycle. Zektar's voice crackled through the universal translator. The Devourers consume everything in their path. Planets stripped border. Entire civilizations reduced to cosmic dust. Our combined fleets are no match for their technology. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembled delegates. The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being of pure light named Lumina, pulsed with anxiety. Our precognitive abilities show only darkness ahead. The probability matrices suggest total galactic extinction within 2 standard years. Council Speaker Mordan, an ancient keeper whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, raised his gnarled appendage for silence. There is one possibility we have not yet discussed, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The legends speak of a warrior species from the Outer Rim. A people so fierce in battle that even the mention of their name once struck fear into the hearts of conquerors. You cannot be serious, scoffed Ambassador Zilnara of the hegemony. Those are children's tales. Myths told to frighten the young. No such species exists. Mordan's ancient eyes gleamed. The humans were real, Ambassador. I've seen the archives. Before the Great Silence, before they withdrew from galactic affairs, they fought in wars that reshaped the very fabric of space-time itself. They were spoken of as legends, even in their own time. The chamber fell silent. The humans were indeed spoken of in hushed tones across the galaxy, but most considered them extinct or mythical. Stories told of a bipedal species from a blue and green world called Earth, warriors who fought not for conquest or resources, but for principles that few other species could comprehend. They were said to possess a peculiar trait called stubbornness that made them incapable of surrender, even in the face of impossible odds. The last confirmed human sighting was over 300 years ago, Admiral Zektar pointed out. Their homeworld's coordinates were lost when the navigational archives were corrupted during the Silicon Wars. Not lost, Mordan corrected. Hidden. The humans requested isolation after the incident at Proxima Station. They withdrew their ambassadors, recalled their trade fleets, and vanished behind a wall of automated defenses that no one has been able to penetrate. Commander Tlara of the Epsilon Defense Forces leaned forward. Even if they still exist, why would they help us? We ostracized them, called them barbaric, primitive. Their methods of warfare were considered too extreme by galactic standards. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The same species they had once deemed too violent for civilized society was now their only hope against an enemy that made human warfare look like a friendly disagreement. There are whispers, Mordan continued, of human ships seen in the disputed territories. Scout vessels with designs unlike anything currently in service. If the humans survive, they have been watching, waiting. Dr. Yeklar, the Confederation's chief xenobiologist, accessed her databanks. Human psychological profiles from the archives indicate they possess what they call pack bonding. They form emotional attachments not just to their own kind, but to other species they deem worthy of protection. If we could convince them that the galaxy itself has become their pack, ad dangerous gambit, lumina pulsed. Humans were also known for their unpredictability. Their emotional responses often defied logical analysis. Admiral Zektar's tactical display showed the Devourer fleet's projected path. The Centauri cluster will be their next target. 7 billion souls across 4 worlds. We need a miracle, and if the humans are that miracle, I volunteer to lead the expedition, Commander Tlara announced suddenly. The archives indicate humans respond better to military personnel than diplomats. My species, the Kythera, fought alongside them in the border conflicts. They called us kindred spirits. Mordan nodded approvingly. The journey to human space will take weeks through the neutral zones. The Devourers will not wait for our return. Then, we send word ahead, Zektar decided. Broadcast on all frequencies. Old human communication protocols. If they're listening, they'll hear us. Dr. Yeklar began composing the message. What do we tell them? How do you ask legends to become reality? The question hung in the air like a challenge to fate itself. Outside the council chamber, automated distress signals continued streaming in from the outer systems. The Devourers showed no signs of slowing their advance. Time was running out for everything the galaxy had built over millennia. Commander Tlara stepped forward. We tell them the truth, that their galaxy is dying, that civilizations they once knew are being erased from existence, and that we need the one thing they were always famous for, which is... Ambassador Zilnara asked. Hope, Tlara replied simply. Humans never gave up, even when every logical analysis said they should. They called it their greatest strength and their greatest flaw. The message was crafted carefully, using old human linguistic patterns recovered from archaeological sites. It spoke not of military alliance or strategic advantage, but of children who would never see another sunrise, of art and music and literature that would be lost forever, of the dreams of a million species facing extinction. As the transmission burst across subspace toward the coordinates of humanity's last known location, the Galactic Council could only wait and hope that somewhere in the vast darkness, the legendary warriors of Earth were listening. The chamber gradually emptied as representatives returned to prepare their worlds for what might come. But more done remained, staring at the star chart that showed humanity's isolated sector of space. He had been young when the humans withdrew, but he remembered their ambassador's final words to the council. We'll be here if you need us. We just hope you never do. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace toward human territory. The Devourers had changed course, accelerating their timeline. The Centauri cluster would fall within hours, not days. As the first reports of the attack reached the council, a single word appeared on every communication channel simultaneously, transmitted on frequencies that had been silent for 3 centuries. Acknowledged. The humans had heard them. Whether they would answer the call remained to be seen, but across the galaxy, hope flickered back to life in the hearts of countless beings who had given up on tomorrow. The legends were about to become real once more. In the depths of space, ancient war machines began to stir from their long slumber, and somewhere on a blue world that time had almost forgotten, humanity prepared to remind the universe why they had once been spoken of in whispers of awe and terror. The galaxy's children had called for help. Their guardian angels were coming home. The transmission reached Earth's defense grid exactly 72 hours after the Galactic Council's desperate plea. In the Sol System's command center, buried deep beneath what was once called Switzerland, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun studied the decoded message with tired eyes that had seen too much of war. 300 years, she murmured to her aide, Captain Marcus Torres. 300 years since they told us our methods were too brutal, our responses too extreme. Now, they come crawling back. Torres pulled up tactical displays, showing the galaxy beyond their borders. The Devourer threat appears genuine, Admiral. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking their advance for months. The destruction is comprehensive. Admiral Chun had lived through humanity's exodus from galactic politics. She remembered the accusations, the condemnation, the way former allies had turned their backs when humanity's darker nature revealed itself during the Proxima Station incident. The galaxy had wanted humanity's protection, but not their methods. They wanted sanitized warfare, clean victories without the messy realities of what it took to truly win. Show me the latest intelligence on these Devourers, she commanded. The holographic display materialized between them, showing sleek biomechanical vessels that seemed to shift and adapt as they moved through space. The ships were massive, each one the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that defied conventional understanding of physics. They don't just destroy, Captain Torres explained. They consume. Every atom of matter is broken down and absorbed into their fleet matrix. planets, stations, ships, people. Everything becomes part of their collective mass. Our xenobiologists theorize they're not even originally from this galaxy. Numbers? Admiral Chen asked. Conservative estimates place their fleet strength at over 10,000 major vessels, with support craft in the millions. They reproduce by consuming, so every victory makes them stronger. Admiral Chen studied the tactical projections. The Devourers moved like a plague across the galaxy, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. Their technology was clearly superior to anything the current galactic civilizations possessed. But then the galaxy had grown soft in humanity's absence. They had forgotten what true warfare looked like. What's our current fleet status? She inquired. The home fleet maintains 300 capital ships, 1,500 cruisers, and approximately 8,000 support vessels, all fully automated with skeleton crews. The outer defense rings have another 1,000 automated fortress platforms. It seemed pitifully small compared to the Devourer numbers, but Admiral Chen knew something the galaxy had forgotten. War wasn't just about numbers. It was about will, determination, and the willingness to make choices that others couldn't stomach. Contact the War Council, she ordered. Full assembly in 1 hour. And activate the reserve fleets. Torres hesitated. Admiral, the reserve fleets have been in deep storage for over a century. Some of those ships were designed for conflicts that required solutions the galaxy found unpalatable. Admiral Chen finished. I know, Captain, but we're not fighting for galactic approval anymore. We're fighting for survival. As Torres hurried to carry out her orders, Admiral Chen accessed her personal files. Hidden within layers of encryption were the true records of humanity's capabilities. The weapons they had developed, but never deployed. The strategies they had perfected, but never implemented. The galaxy had seen only a fraction of human potential during their time in galactic politics. The War Council convened in a chamber that hadn't been used for active planning since humanity's withdrawal. 12 figures materialized as holograms around the circular table. The most brilliant military minds Earth had produced, some still breathing, others preserved in quantum consciousness matrices to serve eternally as strategic advisors. General Patricia Nakamura, head of the Terran Defense Forces, spoke first. The Centauri cluster fell 6 hours ago. 7 billion lives extinguished in less than an hour. The Devourers are already moving toward the Vega system. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Recommendations? Full mobilization, responded Field Marshal Alexander Petrov, his consciousness matrix flickering slightly. Every mothballed ship, every reserve unit, every experimental weapon system. This isn't a time for half measures. The political implications of re-entering galactic affairs, warned Director Helena Cross of Strategic Intelligence. If we intervene, we're bound by the Accords of Geneva 7. Limited engagement protocols, protection of non-combatants, adherence to galactic warfare conventions. The Geneva 7 Accords were written by species who had never faced extinction, General Nakamura countered. They're luxuries we can't afford against an enemy that shows no restraint. Admiral Chen pulled up the classified files that only the War Council could access. The Prometheus Project, the Ragnarok Initiative, the Lazarus Protocol. These were shelved because the galaxy called them war crimes before they were even deployed. The room fell silent. Those projects represented humanity's darkest innovations, weapons, and strategies so devastating that they had been deemed too dangerous for civilized warfare. Technologies that could unmake matter at the quantum level, strategies that turned entire star systems into weapons, protocols that redefined what it meant to fight a war. The question, Admiral Chen continued, is whether we're willing to become monsters to fight monsters. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, Chief Scientific Advisor, materialized her hologram into the discussion. The Devourers themselves violate every principle of the Geneva 7 Accords. They're not a recognized government, they don't distinguish between military and civilian targets, and they commit genocide as a standard operating procedure. Legally speaking, the Accords don't apply. Legally speaking, Admiral Chen mused. But morally, it was Captain Torres who answered, his voice transmitted from the communication center. Admiral, we're receiving real-time transmissions from the Vega system. The Devourers have begun their assault. Estimated time until total consumption, 4 hours. The War Council watched in silent horror as the tactical displays showed the systematic destruction of a civilization that had stood for over 2,000 years. 12 billion beings reduced to raw materials for an endless hunger that could never be satisfied. Admiral Chun made her decision. Activate all protocols. Prometheus, Ragnarok, Lazarus, everything. If the galaxy wants their legends back, they'll get them. All of them. Even the ones they tried to forget. General Nakamura's image solidified with determination. Rules of engagement? There are no rules, Admiral Chen replied. There is only victory or extinction. The Devourers want to consume everything? Let them try to digest humanity. The orders went out across the Sol system and beyond. In hidden shipyards throughout the Kuiper Belt, massive vessels began emerging from centuries of storage. These weren't the ships the galaxy remembered, sleek, efficient vessels designed for conventional warfare. These were monsters of metal and energy built for wars that the galaxy had prayed would never come. The reserve fleets were humanity's secret shame and their ultimate insurance policy. Ships that could crack planets, weapons that could ignite stars, defense systems that turned space itself into a weapon. They had been hidden away because they represented what humanity could become when pushed beyond all limits. As the first wave of the human expeditionary force began forming up near Neptune, Admiral Chen sent her response to the Galactic Council's plea for help. It was simple and direct, transmitted on frequencies that would reach every corner of civilized space. Humanity acknowledges your request for assistance. Be advised, we are no longer the species you knew. We have evolved beyond your comfort zone. The Devourers will be stopped, but the methods we employ may horrify you more than the enemy you face. You ask for legends. Legends are rarely as heroic as the story suggests. Consider this your final warning. The transmission ended, and humanity began its journey back to a galaxy that had forgotten what true war looked like. They would be reminded soon enough, and they would understand why some legends were better left as myths. In the depths of space, the Devourers continued their relentless advance, unaware that they had just awakened something far more dangerous than anything they had ever consumed. The apex predators of Earth were coming, and they had 3 centuries of suppressed fury to unleash upon their enemies. The first contact between humanity and the Devourers occurred in the Kepler 442 system, 3 days after the fall of Vega. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as her sensors detected the massive biomechanical fleet consuming what had once been a thriving research colony. Devourer count? She asked her tactical officer. 237 major vessels, Admiral. Estimated support craft in the thousands. They're strip mining the 4th planet. Vasquez nodded calmly. The Retribution was alone against impossible odds, but that was exactly how humanity preferred to fight. Her ship was one of the new Ragnarok-class dreadnoughts, built using technology that the galaxy had deemed too dangerous for practical application. Signal the fleet, she commanded. Execute Prometheus protocol. Throughout the system, space itself began to shimmer. What the Devourer's sensors had registered as empty voids suddenly erupted with human vessels materializing from dimensional folds. The humans had mastered technologies that other species had only theorized about. Reality became malleable in their hands. The engagement began with what the old galactic warfare manuals would have called a war crime. The UES Nemesis fired its primary weapon, a directed quantum cascade that didn't just destroy matter, but retroactively prevented it from ever having existed. 3 Devourer vessels simply ceased to be, leaving not even debris behind. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming. Biomechanical tendrils, each the size of a battleship, lashed out across space toward the human fleet. They moved with impossible speed, adapting their form to optimize for destruction. Interesting, muttered Dr. Sarah Kim from her position at the science station. They're not just biological. There's a quantum consciousness underlying their actions. They're learning from our attacks in real time. Commander Vasquez smiled grimly. Good. Let them learn. Weapons free. Show them what 3 centuries of frustrated innovation looks like. The U.S. Harbinger deployed humanity's most controversial creation, the Cascade Lance. The weapon didn't simply fire energy or matter. It fired possibilities themselves, rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in a targeted area. Where it struck, Devourer ships found themselves subject to contradictory physical laws that tore them apart from within. The Devourer's adaptive nature worked against them for the first time in their existence. They tried to learn from and counter each human attack, but humanity had learned to fight wars on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. While the enemy adapted to conventional tactics, human ships phased through dimensions, attacked from impossible angles, and employed weapons that redefined what warfare could be. Enemy attempting to escape through hyperspace, reported Lieutenant Zhang from the navigation console. Denied, Vasquez responded. Activate the Lazarus net. Around the system's perimeter, massive installations that had been quietly building themselves from converted asteroids suddenly powered up. The Lazarus net was humanity's answer to enemies who try to flee. It didn't just prevent faster-than-light travel. It created a quantum prison that trapped everything within a defined space-time bubble. The Devourers found themselves unable to retreat for the first time in their expansion across the galaxy. Their biomechanical ships began exhibiting what could only be described as panic, firing wildly at targets that weren't there, attempting maneuvers that defied their own understanding of space. They're trying to communicate, Dr. Kim announced, her voice filled with surprise. Broad-spectrum transmission across all frequencies. Translation? Vasquez asked. It's primitive. Basic mathematical concepts. They're asking what we are. Commander Vasquez authorized the response personally. The message that went out wasn't translated into any galactic standard language. It was sent in pure human mathematics, the language of logic and force that transcended species barriers. We are the species you have never encountered, the message read. We are adaptation incarnate. We are the civilization that learned to wage war across dimensions you cannot perceive. We are what happens when predators are given time to evolve. The Devourer response was immediate and terrifying. Their ships began to merge, flowing together like liquid metal until they formed a single massive construct that dwarfed even humanity's largest vessels. Biomechanical tendrils reached out not through space, but through time itself, attempting to strike at the human fleet's past. Temporal attacks detected, Lieutenant Zhang reported. They're trying to prevent our ships from ever having been built. Temporal shields active, Vasquez commanded. Return fire. Target their causal nexus. The UES Kronos, humanity's most classified vessel, emerged from its dimensional hiding place. The ship existed partially outside of normal time, making it immune to temporal attacks. Its weapon wasn't energy or matter, but pure causality itself. When it fired, it didn't destroy the Devourer construct. It convinced the universe that it had never existed. The massive biomechanical entity simply faded from reality, taking with it all the consumed matter and energy it had accumulated during its rampage through the galaxy. 12 star systems worth of stolen mass returned to the universe, reforming into new stars and planets that immediately began the process of evolution all over again. Impossible, Doctor Kim Yisperet. They violated conservation of energy on a galactic scale. We've had 300 years to figure out how to break physics, Vasquez reminded her. The galaxy wanted us to find civilized ways to fight wars. Instead, we found ways to make war itself irrelevant. The remaining Devourer vessels found themselves facing an enemy that fought on levels they couldn't comprehend. Human ships attacked from parallel dimensions, weapons fired backwards through time to strike targets before they could defend themselves, and defensive systems that turned the very concept of damage into a weapon against attackers. Within 6 hours, the entire Devourer force had been eliminated. Not destroyed, not defeated, eliminated from existence itself, as if they had never been. The human fleet began the process of restoring the consumed systems, using technologies that rebuilt entire worlds from quantum foam. Commander Vasquez opened a channel to Earth Command. Admiral Chun, Kepler 442 is secure. Enemy force eliminated with 0 human casualties. Beginning restoration of consumed systems. Admiral Chen's response carried across the light years with satisfaction. Excellent work, Commander. How long until the Devourer main force receives word of their defeat? They won't. Dr. Kim interjected from her station. Our quantum censorship protocols ensured that no information about this engagement can reach their fleet. As far as they know, their advance force simply vanished. Perfect. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. Let them wonder what happened. Fear of the unknown has always been humanity's greatest weapon. As the human fleet began the process of rebuilding what the Devourers had consumed, reports started flowing in from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council was monitoring the engagement through long-range sensors, and the data they were receiving defied their understanding of warfare itself. Ambassador Zilnara's emergency transmission reached the human fleet an hour later. "What have you done?" Her voice shook with something between awe and terror. "Our sensors show the complete cessation of Devourer activity in 7 systems simultaneously. How is this possible?" Commander Vasquez authorized the response. "We employed necessary force to neutralize the threat. As we warned, our methods may not align with galactic sensibilities. You've rewritten the laws of physics." Zilnara accused. "Matter cannot simply be restored from nothing. Time cannot be used as a weapon." "You asked for legends," Vasquez replied calmly. "Legends don't follow rules. They make them." The communication ended, leaving the human fleet to continue its work. Throughout the restored systems, new civilizations were already beginning to evolve at an accelerated rate. Humanity had learned to be gardeners as well as warriors, nurturing life even as they protected it from extinction. But the real war was just beginning. The main Devourer force was still advancing toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. They had never faced true resistance before, but they were about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object that refused to acknowledge the laws of physics. Commander Vasquez looked out at the stars that now burned brightly where there had been only darkness hours before. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and they had brought gifts that no one had asked for and weapons that no one could understand. The legends were no longer just stories, and the universe itself would never be the same. The final battle for the galaxy began in the Sagittarius Arm, where the main Devourer force had cornered the remnants of galactic civilization. Admiral Sarah Chun stood aboard the UES Infinity, humanity's flagship that existed simultaneously across 17 dimensions, watching as 1,000,000 enemy vessels prepared to consume the last free worlds in known space. The Galactic Council's refugee fleet clustered behind massive defensive installations that sparked and failed under the relentless Devourer assault. Mordun's ancient voice crackled across emergency frequencies as the Council's last stronghold began to crumble. "They've broken through the outer defenses," he reported. "All remaining naval forces are engaging, but our losses are catastrophic. If you have a plan, Admiral Chun, now would be the time to implement it." Admiral Chun studied the tactical display with the patience of a predator that had been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. The Devourer fleet was indeed massive, but they had made a crucial error. In their hunger to consume the last vestiges of galactic civilization, they had gathered their entire force into a single location. "All human fleets, this is Admiral Chun," she broadcast across secure channels. "Execute final protocol. Authorization, Omega Black." Across the galaxy, every human vessel received the signal that they had hoped would never come. Final protocol wasn't just a battle plan. It was the complete restructuring of local reality to ensure victory at any cost. It was the weapon that humanity had spent 300 years perfecting, the ultimate expression of their refusal to accept defeat. The space around the Devourer fleet began to shimmer as fundamental forces reasserted themselves according to human, well, rather than natural law. Gravity became selective, affecting only enemy vessels. Time moved backwards for Devourer weapons, but forwards for their targets. The electromagnetic spectrum itself turned hostile to biomechanical constructs. What are they doing? Ambassador Zilnara's panicked voice echoed across council frequencies as sensors registered impossible readings throughout the battle zone. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, transmitting from the UES Prometheus Deep within the human fleet, provided the explanation that no one wanted to hear. We're implementing the anthropic principle on a galactic scale. Reality is being adjusted to ensure human survival and enemy destruction. The Devourers had never faced an enemy that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. Their adaptive nature, which had allowed them to consume entire galactic arms, became their weakness as they tried to adapt to rules that changed faster than they could process. The UES Infinity phased through 17 dimensions simultaneously, appearing inside the Devourer formation and deploying humanity's most terrifying creation, the Genesis device. The weapon didn't destroy, it created. It spawned new forms of matter and energy that existed specifically to unmake biomechanical constructs. Enemy attempting temporal retreat, reported Commander Torres from his position at Tactical. They're trying to flee into the past. Denied, Admiral Chen responded. Activate the Chronos anchor. Nothing leaves this time stream without our permission. The battle became something that no existing language could properly describe. Human ships fought across multiple dimensions while their weapons attacked through time itself. The Devourers found their consumed mass being retroactively freed as causality weapons convinced the universe that the consumption had never occurred. Entire star systems that had been devoured months ago suddenly reappeared, their populations confused but alive. The effect spread backward through time, undoing years of Devourer expansion as humanity's temporal weapons reached further and further into the past. This is impossible, Dr. Yeklar transmitted from the Confederation science vessel. They're violating every known law of physics simultaneously. Physics is a suggestion, Admiral Chen replied. Laws are what you make them when you have enough power to enforce your will upon reality itself. The Devourer fleet began to fragment as individual ships realized their collective was failing for the first time in their existence. Some vessels attempted to retreat to other galaxies, only to find that humanity had erected barriers around local space-time that prevented faster-than-light travel beyond the galactic rim. They're trapped, Commander Vasquez reported from the UES Retribution, which was single-handedly dismantling a cluster of enemy vessels using weapons that fired pure concepts rather than energy. Nowhere to run, and they're finally encountering something they can't adapt to. The final phase of the battle began when Admiral Chun authorized the deployment of humanity's most classified technology, the Consciousness Transfer Matrix. The device didn't just destroy enemy ships, it absorbed their collective intelligence, adding their knowledge to humanity's vast databases while purging their aggressive programming. We're not just defeating them, Dr. Hayes explained to the horrified Galactic Council. We're rehabilitating them, converting their biomechanical constructs into tools for galactic reconstruction. The transformation was visible across the battlefield as massive Devourer vessels began to shift their forms, their aggressive biomechanical nature replaced with something entirely different. They became constructor ships, designed to rebuild what they had consumed rather than destroy what they encountered. By the ancient stars, Mordun whispered, his voice carrying across all frequencies. You're not just winning the war. You're reversing it entirely. Admiral Chin nodded with satisfaction as her sensors showed the last Devourer vessel completing its transformation. War isn't about destruction. It's about imposing your will upon reality. We've simply imposed our will more effectively than anyone else. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy fundamentally changed. Entire star systems have been restored from temporal echoes. The Devourer fleet, now reprogrammed, began the process of rebuilding everything they had consumed. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned that the human legends weren't just stories. They were warnings about what became possible when a species refused to accept limitations. The Galactic Council convened on the newly restored world of Centauri Prime, where 7 billion beings have been returned to life through temporal manipulation. The chamber was filled with delegates who struggled to process what they had witnessed. "The war is over," Admiral Chun announced as her holographic image materialized before the assembly. "The Devourer threat has been neutralized and converted into a reconstruction force. All consumed systems are being restored to their pre-invasion states." "At what cost?" Ambassador Zilnara demanded. "You've rewritten the fundamental laws of reality. The universe itself has been altered to suit human needs." "The universe is what we make it," Admiral Chun replied calmly. "We've simply made it a place where extinction is no longer inevitable, and where life has a chance to flourish regardless of the threats it faces." Council Speaker Mordun raised his ancient hand for silence. "The question before us now is simple. Do we welcome humanity back into galactic affairs, knowing what they've become? Or do we ask them to return to their isolation, hoping we never need their protection again?" The debate that followed lasted for days, but the outcome was inevitable. The galaxy had seen what happened when humanity was excluded from galactic affairs. They had also seen what happened when humanity was given no choice but to intervene with maximum force. The compromise reached was unlike anything in galactic history. Humanity would return to galactic civilization, but as protectors rather than participants. They would maintain their advanced technologies and impossible weapons, serving as guardians against threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. In return, the galaxy would accept that some threats required solutions that defied moral comfort zones. War crimes became necessary tools when facing extinction. The rules of civilized warfare were luxuries that could only exist under humanity's protection. Admiral Chun accepted the arrangement with the weary satisfaction of someone who had carried an impossible burden for far too long. "We'll take the responsibility," she concluded. "We've been monsters, so you don't have to be. We've broken the laws of physics, so you can live safely within them." As the Galactic Council formally ratified the new accords, human ships began appearing throughout known space. Not as conquerors or traitors, but as silent guardians watching for threats that might require impossible solutions. The legends had become reality, and reality would never be the same. Humanity had returned to the stars not as the species the galaxy remembered, but as something far more powerful and infinitely more protective. They were the guardians of everything that lived and breathed in the vast darkness between worlds. In the years that followed, children across the galaxy would grow up with new stories. Tales of the humans who had made themselves into monsters so that monsters could never again threaten the innocent. They were spoken of as legends still, but now the legends were real, watching from the darkness between stars, ensuring that the light of civilization would never be extinguished again. The galaxy was safe, protected by beings who had transcended the limitations of physics itself. And if that protection came at the cost of comfortable illusions about the nature of war and peace, it was a price that existence itself had proven willing to pay.